palace did not expect the announcement to land like thunder. What was meant to be a controlled royal decision became an emotional detonation the moment Camilla understood what it truly meant. Princess Charlotte had not simply been honored, she had been elevated. And worse for Camilla, the new title moved straight past her side of the family, leaving no room for negotiation, no room for correction, and no room for denial. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles held the signed order with a stillness that frightened the room. The paper confirmed Charlotte would be named Royal Keeper of the Windsor Legacy, a ceremonial title meaning a symbolic family role tied to Windsor history, service, and the crown. The king made it official. Camilla had expected a path for her family. Some sign her grandchildren would be folded into visibility. Instead, the order placed Charlotte inside a protected line that Camilla's family could approach, but never enter. Camilla read the words once. Then she read them again. Her hand tightened, and the silence became cruel. She did not explode. She froze. That restraint made the moment sharper, because everyone knew the storm had not passed. It had only gone underground. The queen consort pushed the paper away, as if the ink itself had insulted her. Her face carried shock, then humiliation. Charles did not raise his voice. He did not defend himself. That hurt her most. The monarch sat across from her, like a man who had burned the bridge behind him. His silence told Camilla this was not a misunderstanding. It was not a draft waiting for softer language. It was the future, already sealed. Behind that future stood William and Catherine, consulted before the order reached the king. William understood the risk. Catherine understood the burden. Charlotte had become the name at the center of a royal line drawn in ink. The title was not decoration. It was protection. It said the monarchy's deepest symbols remained with the direct bloodline, not spread outward to soothe private wounds. Camilla stood, and the chair moved, making the room colder. She looked toward the door, then back at Charles, and her silence became its own accusation. By the time she left, the palace no longer wondered whether she felt betrayed. Everyone understood. The darker question now was who she would confront first. And as the door closes behind her, the palace begins to understand that this is not just about Charlotte's, some new title. It is about every person who suddenly knows they have been passed over. Every royal crisis has a public face, but this one has private casualties. Charlotte is too young to grasp the full weight of what has been placed on her shoulders. William sees danger in the honor. Catherine feels the pressure before anyone speaks it aloud. Charles sees legacy. Camilla sees exclusion. And inside that painful divide, a family title becomes something sharper than a crown jewel. It becomes proof of belonging. Charlotte sat quietly after the announcement, unaware that her name had become a line no one could uncross. The title now tied her to royal continuity, meaning the future story of the monarchy, and who carries its deepest symbols forward. William understood that kind of honor never arrived alone. The prince knew praise could become pressure, and pressure could follow a child into every room she entered. Catherine watched her daughter with a pride that almost broke her, because the same title that lifted Charlotte also placed her inside a battle she never chose. Camilla felt the wound differently. She did not see only a child being honored. She saw a door closing on her own family. The queen consort had spent years believing that time, loyalty, and marriage would soften the edges around royal belonging. She believed her grandchildren might one day stand closer to the ceremonial heart of the palace, not as heirs, but as accepted figures inside its public life. Yet Charlotte's elevation told a colder story. Camilla's family could be welcomed, seated, photographed, and named, but they could not be placed inside the sacred structure that protected the crown's future. Charles knew exactly why that hurt. The king had chosen bloodline symbolism over blended family peace, and that choice exposed a big divide the palace had tried to hide beneath smiles and careful seating plans. His decision mattered because the monarchy survives through clarity. It also mattered because clarity can feel like rejection when one family is lifted and another is left watching from the edge. Charles did not want to wound Camilla, but the monarch understood that emotional comfort could not be allowed to blur the direct line. William had warned of that danger before the order was finalized. In a private family consultation recorded in internal palace notes, the prince argued that Extending ceremonial roles beyond the direct line could confuse the public and weaken trust. He did not speak with cruelty. He spoke like a father who knew Charlotte's future had to be guarded, not scattered among political compromises. But once Camilla learned his warning helped shape the final decision, the pain sharpened into suspicion. Camilla no longer saw William as a cautious future king. She saw him as the hand behind her humiliation. And before she could confront him, the palace had to face the deeper truth. This decision began long before Charlotte's caudle was ever announced. The palace wanted the public to believe Charlotte's title appeared from tradition, duty, and careful royal planning. But behind the polished announcement was one unforgettable trigger. A single ceremony changed everything. A single moment forced Charles to see what others had been whispering for months. And from that moment forward, Camilla's hopes for her family's place near the monarchy began to collapse, without anyone saying it openly. Charles had entered the private Windsor Chapel commemoration, carrying grief he refused to show. A chapel commemoration means a quiet royal service, held to honor memory, duty, and family history, and this one was supposed to pass without tension. But halfway through the memorial reading, the king's voice weakened. He paused too long. The room felt it. Charlotte noticed before most adults did. The young princess stepped forward with a soft confidence, reached for his hand, and steadied him without needing permission. William saw it, and the prince understood why the moment mattered. Charlotte had not performed for attention. She had moved from instinct, and that instinct carried the kind of calm the monarchy prizes in silence. Catherine watched her daughter with pride and fear at once, because tenderness had suddenly become evidence. Charles looked down at Charlotte, and something in him changed. The king did not speak immediately, but the way he held her hand told William that the child had crossed into a deeper place in his heart. Camilla felt the shift before anyone named it. Her relatives were present too, but they seemed unsure inside the solemn rhythm of the service. They smiled at the wrong time, waited for cues, and looked like guests in a room built around inherited duty. The queen consort noticed Charles speaking warmly about Charlotte during the reception. Afterward, then noticed something colder. He avoided every opening that might have led to a future ceremonial role for her side of the time. Family. Charles later told William, in a private recorded family conversation, that Charlotte carried herself with quiet inheritance. The words unsettled the prince, because they sounded less like praise and more like destiny. William did not reject the feeling, but he feared what it could bring. Catherine heard the phrase later, through a documented palace note, and understood its danger. Once a child becomes a symbol, the palace rarely lets the child simply be a child again. A senior courtier moved quickly after that ceremony. In an internal proposal, the courtier suggested Charlotte could become the symbolic guardian of Windsor continuity, a plain way of saying she would represent the family's future link to its oldest identity. Catherine learned the chapel moment had been cited as the emotional reason behind the title, and her heart sank. Charlotte's kindness had become royal evidence. Camilla discovered the truth later, and humiliation hardened into fury. One chapel scene had not merely touched Charles. It had triggered the decision that left her family outside. And fury, inside a palace built on restraint, rarely stays behind closed doors for long. Camilla does not arrive asking for clarification. She arrives already wounded. The title has been signed, Charlotte has been elevated, and the line Camilla thought she had softened around the monarchy has hardened in front of her. When she enters the private room where Charles and William are waiting, the air changes instantly. This is not a discussion about protocol. This is a confrontation about loyalty, blood, and power. Camilla closes the door herself, and the sound lands like a warning. She looks first at Charles, then at William, because both men now carry part of the decision she cannot forgive. Protocol, in plain terms, means the palace rules that decide who stands where, who receives honors, and who is allowed near the most protected royal symbols. The queen consort does not want a lesson in rules. She wants an answer. Why was Charlotte placed inside that ceremonial structure, while her own family was left outside it? Charles keeps his voice low, but the calm only sharpens the wound. He tells Camilla that Charlotte's role is tied to direct succession symbolism, meaning the clear line of future kings and queens that the public understands without confusion. The king says the title was never meant as a personal insult. He says it was about stability. But Camilla hears something colder beneath the careful words. She hears that her family can be accepted, but never trusted with the symbols that shape the monarchy's future. William stays still, but tension moves through him. The prince knows Camilla is not only angry at Charles, she is angry at him too. She turns toward William and accuses him of protecting his own children, while allowing hers to be treated as permanent outsiders. He chooses his words with painful care, because one wrong sentence could turn a family wound into a public rupture. He says Charlotte did not ask to become a symbol. He says the monarchy must not place emotional fairness above constitutional clarity. Camilla loses the last of her restraint. The queen consort asks whether fairness only matters when William's family benefits from it. Charles stiffens, because he knows the accusation has reached beyond policy and into marriage. The king reveals the order cannot be reversed without making the monarchy look unstable. A royal order, he explains, is a formal signed decision from the monarch, and once announced, pulling it back would make the crown look weak, divided, and unsure of its own future. Camilla understands then. This is not a proposal. This is not a draft. This is not a symbolic gesture that can be softened later in private. Charlotte's title is final. William's caution helped shape it. Charles's signature sealed it. And Camilla's family has been moved to the edge of history. Camilla turns to Charles with a question that cuts through every defense. Did he choose Charlotte's future over her dignity? Charles does not answer quickly enough. And in that silence, Camilla hears the answer she feared most. Power in the monarchy does not always announce itself with raised voices. Sometimes it moves through quiet rooms, careful wording, sealed papers, and one signature placed exactly where history demands it. After Camilla's confrontation, the real machinery behind Charlotte's title begins to emerge. This was not a sentimental gift from a grandfather. It was a calculated decision about the future of the crown. Charles sat alone with the final advisory file, and the silence around him felt heavier than any argument. An advisory file, in plain words, is a formal set of private recommendations prepared for the monarch before a major decision is made. The king read every line because he knew the cost. The file did not speak in emotion. It spoke in survival. It said Charlotte's title would strengthen the direct royal line. It said the public needed clarity. It warned that extended family roles could create confusion if they looked too close to inheritance. Charles set his glasses down before signing, and that small pause carried the pain he refused to confess. The monarch knew Camilla would feel excluded. He knew her family had hoped for a softer place inside royal life, somewhere near ceremony, memory, and public recognition. But he also knew the crown could not keep bending toward private comfort. The monarchy mattered because people believed its symbols had meaning. If those symbols became rewards for emotional balance, the whole structure would begin to look negotiable. William understood that danger with a father's fear and a future king's discipline. The prince wanted Charlotte protected from pressure, yet he accepted the logic behind the title, because uncertainty could hurt her even more. If the palace left her role vague, others would argue over it, use it, or weaken it. William did not want his daughter turned into a bargaining chip. He wanted her place defined, before the fight around it became larger than the child herself. Catherine had already asked for caution. In a private conversation recorded in palace family notes, she warned that Charlotte must be shielded from public pressure, not placed beneath it. Catherine's plea mattered, because she saw the human cost before anyone else did. Yet the palace reached a colder conclusion. Clarity was safer than ambiguity. A protected title, even a heavy one, was less dangerous than leaving Charlotte surrounded by whispers. Camilla learned the deeper truth through a documented briefing from a senior courtier, and the revelation struck harder than the order itself. Several courtiers had supported William's position. The resistance to her family was not one man's caution. It was institutional. The queen consort realized the palace machinery had moved around her, past her, and beyond her reach. Camilla's anger changed shape after that. It no longer belonged only to Charles. It no longer rested only on William. It turned toward the palace itself, toward every polished rule that had smiled at her while keeping the final gate locked. And when anger turns from private pain into public behavior, the first cracks become impossible to hide. The morning after the confrontation, The palace feels different. Not louder, colder. Camilla does not need to make another scene for everyone to feel the damage. Staff move carefully. Conversations stop too quickly. Doors close more softly than usual. And at the center of it all is a title that now carries two meanings: Charlotte's rise, and Camilla's painful realization that her family's place has limits. Camilla sits alone after breakfast, and the untouched folder beside her feels louder than any accusation. Internal planning documents, meaning private palace papers, used to organize future events, roles, and formal language, now refer to Charlotte by her new title. That change matters, because palace wording becomes palace reality. Once staff are trained to say a name differently, they begin to treat the person differently. The queen consort knows the folder carries updated protocol language, and she refuses to touch it, because touching it would feel like accepting defeat. Catherine notices the change before Charlotte understands it. A staff member speaks to the young princess with careful formality. Catherine's heart tightens. Charlotte has been honored, yes, but childhood has been touched by expectation. The title matters because it gives the monarchy a clear future symbol. Yet it also places a child under rules she cannot fully understand. Catherine feels pride, then sadness, because the same palace that celebrates her daughter also begins to measure her. Camilla's family feels the consequence without needing a public announcement. Their names quietly disappear from discussions linked to future ceremonial continuity, a phrase meaning events and roles that protect the monarchy's story across generations. The removal matters because it proves the decision was not only emotional, it has practical teeth. The queen consort realizes her relatives are not simply being ignored for one event. They are being moved away from the future structure itself. William learns the mood has darkened through a private briefing from a senior aide. The prince hears that Camilla has questioned whether Catherine encouraged the decision, and his face hardens. He understands the danger instantly. This is no longer only about Charlotte's title or Charles's signature. It is becoming a mother against mother wound, with Catherine accused of quietly defending her daughter by pushing another family further out. Charles adjusts the private schedule himself, and the choice deepens the divide. Charlotte is now expected to attend a future legacy event beside the king, while Camilla's relatives are left off the planning list. Charles believes the moment will strengthen the direct line, but the monarch also knows it will cut his wife again. Still, he does not reverse course. Catherine decides silence has become too dangerous. If Camilla's resentment reaches Charlotte, the title will stop being an honor and become a burden soaked in bitterness. So Catherine prepares to step forward. But her choice to speak will not soften the crisis. It will force the most vulnerable truth into the open. Not every turning point comes with shouting. Some arrive in a room where no aides stand nearby, where no protocol officer can interrupt, and where two women must face what the palace has done to them both. Catherine does not come to gloat. Camilla does not come ready to forgive. But when they sit across from each other, Charlotte's title becomes something deeper than royal privilege. Catherine enters with careful calm, but her voice carries the strain of a mother who has been holding fear too tightly. A protocol officer, in simple terms, is a palace official who manages formal rules, rank, and royal order, and Catherine has made sure none are present. This matters because she does not want the conversation wrapped in royal language. She wants Camilla to hear one truth without ceremony around it. Charlotte must not become the emotional target of adult pain. Camilla sits rigidly, still wounded by what she believes the title has done to her family. The queen consort has not forgotten the planning lists, the changed language, or the quiet way her relatives were moved away from future royal symbolism. She believes her family has been publicly diminished. She believes Catherine benefited from that loss, even if she never said so aloud. And that belief keeps the air between them sharp. Catherine does not defend the palace first. She defends Charlotte. The princess tells Camilla that her daughter did not ask for the title, did not ask to become a symbol, and did not ask to stand at the center of a wound between two families. Her words matter because they pull the conflict away from power and back toward a child. Catherine's fear is simple and devastating. If bitterness reaches Charlotte, the honor will become a burden before she is old enough to understand it. Camilla's anger begins to falter. The queen consort expected pride, maybe victory, maybe quiet satisfaction from Catherine. Instead, she hears exhaustion. She hears a mother frightened by palace attention, by headlines, by the way royal praise can harden into expectation. Catherine reveals, through a private recorded family conversation, that she initially resisted the title because she feared unbearable scrutiny would follow Charlotte for years. Camilla looks away, and something changes. She realizes Catherine did not engineer a triumph over her family. The princess accepted a burden she could not fully stop. That truth does not erase Camilla's humiliation. It does not restore her relatives to the future structure, but it shifts the blame. The wound no longer sits only between two women. Catherine leaves the room knowing nothing has been fully healed. Camilla remains behind, quieter now, no longer raging at Charlotte, no longer certain Catherine is the enemy. And just as the private temperature begins to cool, the public world catches fire. By sunrise, the palace can no longer contain the story. What began as a signed order becomes a national spectacle. The public does not see every private wound, but it understands the headline instantly. Charlotte has been lifted into the heart of Windsor symbolism, and Camilla's family has been left outside the frame. Suddenly, the monarchy's private hierarchy becomes breakfast table debate across Britain. The palace releases its statement with polished calm, but the calm only makes the shock travel faster. A palace statement, in plain words, is the official message used to tell the public what the draver, what the potes more fate, privatement saus airy. This one presents Charlotte's title as a historic honor, rooted in continuity, service, and the future of the crown. It matters, because the words do more than praise a child. They tell the country that Charlotte now represents something protected, something inherited, something Camilla's relatives cannot share. Camilla watches the coverage without speaking, and every sentence seems to tighten around her. The Queen Consort hears one commentator call the decision a firm Windsor correction, and the phrase lands like a public slap. She knows what it means. The public is not only celebrating Charlotte, it is reading the silence around Camilla's family. Her relatives are not named, not defended, not given a matching ceremonial path. They have been left outside the frame, and the country has noticed. William sees Charlotte's name moving across every screen, and the prince feels pride turn into fear. His daughter has become a symbol overnight, and symbols are never left alone. The future king understands why the title matters to the monarchy, because it strengthens the direct line and gives the public a clear image of continuity. But he also understands the cost. Charlotte is still a child, and now strangers are debating her place, as if her life were a royal document open for inspection. Charles follows the reaction with a heavier silence. The king sees support, outrage, confusion, and fascination, all moving at once. One London newspaper defines the morning, with a front page showing Charlotte's name above the words, "The future chosen." That single phrase captures the public mood. Charlotte has been chosen as a symbol of tomorrow. Camilla has been seen as the woman whose family was not chosen at all. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd gathers near the gates, and the debate becomes real. Some cheer Charlotte's new title. Others ask whether Camilla has been quietly sidelined. The Queen Consort hears about the crowd through a private aide's account, and the report leaves her stiller than anger. William hears it too, and the prince knows the palace can no longer pretend this is only a family matter. Charles prepares to bring the family together before the story hardens beyond control. The monarch knows the country has already chosen its interpretations, but the final meaning must come from him. And when Charles finally speaks, he does not speak as a husband, a father, or a grandfather alone. He speaks as the monarch who has decided what must survive. In the end, the title did not destroy the monarchy. It revealed it. Charlotte's elevation exposed the hidden rules everyone had tried to soften with smiles, appearances, and carefully worded unity. Camilla's fury was real because the message was real. Her family could stand near royal life, but not inherit its deepest symbols. And once that truth was spoken through Charlotte's title, nothing could return to the way it was. Charles gathers the family privately, and the room understands the weight before he says a word. The crown, in plain terms, means the monarchy itself, its authority, its history, and the public trust built around the royal line. The king makes the final emotional meaning clear. Charlotte's title belongs to that future, not to personal favoritism. He does not say it to wound Camilla. He says it because the monarchy cannot survive if every private hope is treated like a public right. Camilla absorbs the verdict with visible hurt, but the fight has drained from her. The queen consort knows the order will not be reversed. She knows Charles has chosen a line the palace will defend, even if that line leaves her family standing outside the deepest symbols of royal destiny. Her pain matters, because it is not simple jealousy. It is the realization that marriage brought her near the throne, but not into the inheritance that shapes it. William stands beside Catherine with quiet resolve, and the prince feels the cost settle over him. Charlotte has been lifted, but she has also been marked. The future king understands that protecting his daughter now means more than shielding her from gossip. It means guiding her through the burden of being publicly chosen. Catherine feels the same fear, because Charlotte's name has become larger than childhood, larger than comfort, larger than one family's private peace. Charles admits, through a private recorded family conversation, later documented in palace notes, that the decision was painful, but necessary. The king says the monarchy cannot allow its symbols to become confused by private expectations. That admission matters, because it confirms what Camilla had feared. The decision was not careless. It was not accidental. It was deliberate. And everyone in the room knows deliberate pain cuts deepest. Camilla finally understands the truth beneath her anger. The queen consort was never only raging over a title. She was grieving the boundary between marrying into royalty and inheriting royal destiny. Charlotte's honor became the defining symbol of that boundary. A child lifted into history, a woman forced to accept limits, and a monarchy choosing bloodline continuity over emotional compromise. There is no unresolved ending here. Charlotte rose. Camilla was stopped at the edge of legacy, and the monarchy made its final answer unmistakably clear. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.